of decision-making. New Jersey's 2 titles in 5 years were backstopped by the drafting of Martin Brodeur. The Red Wing franchise was built around Steve Yzerman, who captained 2 cups. Quebec selected Joe Sakic, which eventually gave Colorado the '96 championship. And NHL history was made with a 48th pick in 1979 that brought a mess of cups to Edmonton. Today, 2 new teams make draft day decisions that may fuel future championships in Columbus and Minnesota. But it is the boss on Long Island who can ignite a busy day of drafting. Mike Milbury controls the coveted #1 pick and its destination. That's a reason to smile. Live from the Canadian Airlines Saddledome in Calgary.
Who's picking? What we do know are the New York Islanders are front and center once again. The team that had 4 picks in the first round last year at the draft now has 2. They were #1. Now they have #5 from Tampa, and a deal made this morning, Mike.
What a great deal. Mike Milbury, who really likes to work the floor as the general manager for the Islanders, traded Kevin Weeks and Christian Kudrock, who was a first-round pick last season. Now he's got the #5 pick and the #1 pick. So are we going to see history made here today?
Well, I think perhaps we can see that because Rick DiPietro would appear to be the Islanders' choice, but we're not sure of that yet. What we thought was that the Islanders were going to be in great for goaltending for years to come with Roberto Luongo and Kevin Weeks. Weeks is already gone. Now we understand that Roberto Luongo is off to Florida along with Olli Jokinen in return for Mark Parrish and Oleg Kvasha. This deal unconfirmed, but we believe has been made, and Mike Milbury then will have picks 1 and 5, but he won't have a goalie, and that leads us to the speculation that DiPietro will be the first goalie taken first.
Well, it's looking that way, and I'll tell you the happiest guy in the world right now is Steve Valiquette, who was #3 on the goaltending depth chart for the New York Islanders about 20 minutes ago, and now he's #1 for about another 20 minutes.
Yes, well, let's try and clear up some of this wild speculation, shall we? We have Craig Simpson down on the floor, and he's been in discussion with many of the GMs as this draft gets set to get underway.
Well, Jim, it's interesting. Much like last year's draft, all kinds of talk coming right before the draft begins. Right now, Mike Milbury and Kevin Lowe, the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, are discussing. The New York Islanders table has been loaded with people. Lots of talk that there may be a trade. I don't think it'll be for the first pick overall. It does look like the New York Islanders will be taking DiPietro, but it does look like that 5th pick that they have is up for grabs. Don Waddell, I talked to him as well, the general manager of the Atlanta Thrashers. He's looking to trade, so it should be a lot of action down here.
Well, Craig, before we get to Commissioner Gary Bettman's announcement revealing the #1 overall pick, Columbus as the league continues to grow. Well, it's certainly been a very busy visit to Calgary for the 2 men running all the personnel decisions for the 2 new teams in the NHL. We're up to 30 clubs now. Doug MacLean of the Columbus Blue Jackets and Doug Risebrough from the Minnesota Wild, who is now joined by the 5th member of our broadcast team, Darren Drager. Guys.
Dave, thanks very much. Doug Risebrough, a historic day for the Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets. An exciting expansion draft, but this will be fun too, won't it?
Well, this is kind of the building blocks, and we've said it all along, that we got to make good decisions on these selections, and we're picking high, so it even makes it even more so.
Some teams here, of course, take selections that are tailored to their organization. The expansion teams might have the luxury in that you just take the best player available in that spot.
Yeah, that's where we're looking at, and a lot of it is what happens 1 and 2 with us, but we're really comfortable. I took the flip and took the 3rd pick, and we're happy with it.
Good luck today, Doug.
Thank you.
From one expansion team to another, here's Doug MacLean and Craig Simpson. Craig.
Thanks, Darren. Doug, obviously the expansion draft over with. What do you try to focus on now with the 4th pick in the draft?
Well, we hope that our #1 rated guy is there at 4. So, you know what? We feel terrific whoever we get. You know, we know we're getting a good player.
What's the focus of your team? I know a lot of talk about trades happening on the floor. Are you willing to trade that pick as well?
Right now, I'm willing to listen to any offer. It's going to have to be a good one.
How about the focus of trying to build an expansion team? Are you looking more for defense or for offensive type players?
I'd love to get a 50-goal score today. You think there's any chance of that? No, I don't know. I mean, the best player. That's what we're looking for.
Well, good luck and congratulations. Back up to you, Jim.
Thank you, Craig. Well, you know you're back in Canada for the National Hockey League entry draft when 2 hours before the draft begins, the lineups are outside, people trying to get in to see the draft of players they may not see in a Calgary uniform or any other uniform for a number of years to come. This is a hockey-mad city, and it is evident in the number of people that are buying season tickets to see the Calgary Flames. It's a pleasure to welcome the incoming general manager of the Flames, Craig Button, and the Flames Forever push continues. It looks very much like your team will be able to stay here. Where are you at for your numbers now?
Well, I think we're over the 13,000 number, and we're pushing forward to go onward past 14,000. And we're excited, and it's not just for this year, it's for a long time in Calgary, and we're excited about it.
Appropriate, isn't it, the draft would be in a city like this, because for teams like yours, the draft is the lifeline?
Well, when you talk about 2 hours before the draft, everybody in the building, not only are the people here out of interest, they know the players, and they're excited about watching the players' progress over time. So I think it is exciting. It feels like you're in the right place to have the entry draft.
You have a most interesting day. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but you're the outgoing director of amateur scouting for the Dallas Stars, the incoming general manager of the Flames. How will your day work, and may I ask what will happen if the Flames could make a deal today?
Well, I can be involved in all the functionary duties of the manager's position in Calgary for trades and that sort. I'm not involved in player selection for Calgary. And it's hard, it's difficult, but it's the right thing to do, because you can't work for one organization developing the entry drafts over the whole year and then just flip at the end. And it's hard, but I'll watch with a lot of interest and hope the best for both teams.
Mike Brophy, the number now is 13,022. It looks like the Flames will stay here, and Craig Button has been busy. He brought Mike Vernon back as part of the expansion draft yesterday in a deal with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Well, that just tells you the type of general manager that Craig is. You know, he's known as a guy who's been a great drafter for the Dallas Stars, but he's also a very good hockey man, and I think it's a good thing for the Calgary Flames to bring an experienced guy like Mike Vernon back, because Freddie Brathwaite had a great year this year, but he's not perceived as being that true #1 goaltender. You need a strong goaltending tandem to succeed in the NHL this year, and I think with Vernon, who's obviously been a quality guy over the years, has Stanley Cups to his credit, he's going to be able to spot Freddie Brathwaite, and I think it's going to be a nice pairing.
Mike Vernon, 1 year left on a big money contract. He came from the Minnesota Wild, not the Columbus Blue Jackets. Doug Risebrough engineered the deal with Craig Button. We understand another deal has been made that Sandis Ozolinsh, unsigned restricted free agent of the Colorado Avalanche, is going to move to the Carolina Hurricanes in a package that will be announced as this draft progresses. We'll keep our eyes on that one. Down on the floor, keeping his eyes on what's going on with all the GMs, is Darren Drake.
Thanks very much, Jim. We'll keep an eye on this table right here. The Edmonton Oilers, of course, are continuing to talk. Rookie general manager Kevin Lowe taking things in stride here. He's been very busy. We'll wait until after the first pick. We had hoped to talk to him, but clearly he's got other things going on. The Oilers selecting 17th as we await pick #1 going to the New York Islanders. Now we go to the New York Rangers table with Craig Simpson and the general manager, Glenn Sather.
Well, Glenn Sather, in your new role as general manager of the New York Rangers, not an active first round with no pick, but how has the transition been for you?
Well, it's been interesting. I wish I could say that, you know, there's a huge change from city to city as far as hockey's concerned, but, you know, this is a hockey business, and I think it's pretty much the same with every team here. We've all been studying the draft picks, trying to make deals, see what you can come up with to improve your team. It's really hockey when it gets down to the end, and it doesn't matter where you are, it's still the same kind of a game.
Well, good luck with the New York Rangers.
Thank you.
The most interesting factor of the National Hockey League draft coming up. The first round begins in a few minutes.
As one scout said yesterday, Mike Milbury's team could win the World Junior Championship for the next 3 years. He's been stockpiling picks, 4 in the first round last year. He's traded one of those players, Christian Kudrock. 2 picks right now in the first round. The Islanders haven't had the first pick in the draft since 1973, and wouldn't they like to find Dennis Potvin again? But we think they'll take a goaltender.
I'll tell you, if you're a New York Islanders fan, you've got to be so thrilled. #1, you win the draft lottery. I don't think anybody anticipated they were going to do that. On top of that, you've got Eric Brewer, Taylor Pyatt coming along. Very, very good, top-notch junior players. Taylor Pyatt, I think, is going to be a great NHL player. His dad played in the NHL. And, you know, they've been out of the playoffs for 6 years, and it'd be great if they can get back in.
We'd like to welcome the 2 new teams joining the league as well, Minnesota and Columbus. Welcome. And, of course, welcome to all the Islander fans as well. It's great to be here. You know, we're very pleased today to join all of you, the draftees and the families. Believe me, we're as nervous as you are, being the new ownership. We're looking forward this morning to making a little history. The New York Islanders are very pleased that we're doing something this morning that has not been done since the draft changed the NHL in 1969, in which the amateur sponsorship changed. So this morning, with much anticipation, hope, and excitement, the New York Islanders are picking Rick DiPietro, a goaltender from Boston University, as a #1 pick.
You guys go over the tape.
Well, there you have it. History in the making, announced by Sanjay Kumar, one of the 2 new owners of the New York Islanders. 18-year-old Rick DiPietro from Winthrop, Massachusetts, who opted into this draft at the 11th hour, goes right to the top. Previously, Roberto Luongo, also drafted by the Islanders, was the highest pick for a goaltender. Mike, I always find this rather ironic that throughout the playoffs and the regular season, we talk about the goaltender being the most important player on the ice. Yet in all these years, there's never been a #1 pick, the first overall pick, a goaltender, and now it is Rick DiPietro.
You know what? It's an amazing thing, as you say. It's like in baseball, they pick pitchers first. In football, they pick quarterbacks first. In hockey, they don't seem to pick goaltenders first. But now we've seen it happen, and don't be surprised if we see it happen 2 years in a row.
Remember, Kevin Weeks has been traded. Rick DiPietro is noted for his puck handling, and there was so much discussion about that yesterday at his media conferences that people forgot to ask him if he can stop the puck. He's pretty good at that, too, and many of the people around the National Hockey League thought his stock rose considerably as the season wore on.
Well, he's a very personable kid, bordering on cocky, and the one thing I think he's going to have to change a little bit for the NHL level is that at the college game, he likes to go out of his net and chase down every single puck that comes in his zone. You just can't get away with that at the NHL level, because guys will run you.
But if you watch the New Jersey Devils win the Stanley Cup and watched how their defense reacted with a goaltender like Martin Brodeur, who is so good at playing the puck and passes better than some of the defensemen on the team, you know how important it is to have a goaltender who can move the puck. But there's some real drama here. Kevin Weeks has gone to Tampa. We understand that Roberto Luongo has been traded to Florida. That means Rick DiPietro steps in as the #1 goaltender in the New York Islanders organization right away. He thought and thought about opting into this draft, and I guess it's obviously a very good thing that he did.
Well, there's no question, because I think the next year's draft is going to be very goaltender heavy at the top.
Guys, history in the making, as you've talked about. Rick DiPietro, how does that feel? You're shaking right now, and you should be.
Yeah, it's a fantastic honor. It's something that I never could have imagined really happening. Coming into it, this wasn't really ever a possibility, but to finally have it happen is fantastic.
You're used to the pressure, obviously, but boy, the New York Islanders done something for you. It's talk that Roberto Luongo has been traded, and we heard the Kevin Weeks deal. So you are their future. How does that feel?
Oh, it feels unbelievable. It's a lot of pressure, but something that I really want to be able to jump into and handle. And I think it'll be a great fit.
Rick DiPietro, the #1 pick in the 2000 NHL entry draft. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Craig?
Mike, last year you had 4 picks in the first round. Again, busy here. How important was it to make that deal with Tampa Bay before making this one?
It was really important. This is the most important, goaltending being the most important position in the sport. We're hanging a lot of our reputations on this kid. It's gutsy, but we have, if we may be crazy, but at least we've got the courage of our convictions, and we think he's a very special player.
Once again, congratulations, a big first round.
Thank you.
Back up to you guys.
Well, the New York Islanders, I think, will be prominent again before this day is over. They do have the #5 pick, and Mike Milbury has always been willing to wheel and deal and has so many prospects that other teams covet. Prospects. That's what the Atlanta Thrashers are after. They came into the National Hockey League last year and had the first pick. Don Waddell at the center of your picture chose Patrick Steffet as the #1 pick. And like all expansion franchises, they really need to stockpile youth and players who can take them into the future. They need some skill, Mike.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they've got to have a finisher. That's the one thing, you know, Doug McLean joked about it at the top of the show, saying he'd love to draft a 50-goal scorer. Well, wouldn't everybody love to? And I see them holding a sweater down there, which would seem to indicate they're going to use the pick. As I said earlier, there was so much talk about teams wanting to move up for the #2 pick because there seems to be a block of 5 or 6 guys who all seem to be even in terms of talent and how they may develop in the future. But Donnie Waddell's been a guy who loves to build through the draft. That's his reputation, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he keeps the pick and goes for Klesla.
Last year they took a forward, and their forward, Patrick Steffet, was one of the few players who actually played in the NHL out of the draft. He and Tim Connolly were the only regulars. Here's Don Waddell.
I'd like to thank the city of Calgary, the great hockey fans of the city of Calgary, for all the hospitality shown to us this week. I'd like to thank our fans from Atlanta that made this trip and all the fans back home watching us on TV. We'd also like to congratulate the New Jersey Devils on winning the Stanley Cup championship. With our first pick in the 2000 entry draft, the Atlanta Thrashers select from the WCHA University of Wisconsin Badgers, forward Danny Heatley.
The Atlanta Thrashers have selected Danny Heatley.
Danny Heatley was expected because he's a Calgary boy. Calgary's own Danny Heatley, out of the University of Wisconsin, a big power forward who played for the Calgary Canucks in Tier 2, and so many of the people in the audience today had a chance to watch. Goes number 2 to the Atlanta Thrashers, and that was a look of relief.
Well, certainly was. I'm sure he was a little bit disappointed that he didn't go number 1 overall, but, you know, he's drawn some comparisons to an old player who played for the Philadelphia Flyers, Tim Kerr, in that he's not the greatest skater in the world, but he's got wonderful hands, and wouldn't we love to have a guy with wonderful hands? Every team loves that.
You know what I can't help but think about today? Badger Bob Jonsson from the University of Wisconsin coached the Calgary Flames to a Stanley Cup. He was noted for his days at the University of Wisconsin. A Calgary boy out of the University of Wisconsin, number 2 overall. Somewhere Badgers saying, this is a great day for hockey.
And it certainly is a great day for Danny Heatley because, you know, when you talk to this kid, he comes across as so mature. He's got his feet grounded. He comes from a very good family, and he'll be a guy who has a good chance to step in. May have to, since he's a university player.
His mother, Karen, as you saw, she made him go out and get a haircut for this draft, and that's what Karen got underneath that hat. His father, Murray, also played at the University of Wisconsin for Badger Bob Jonsson. Danny Heatley, whose former teammates, his line mates from the Calgary Canucks like Mo Hallett and Ryan Mininowicz are here today watching him. They know what a great junior and collegiate career he's had and may still have, and now he's an Atlanta Thrasher. Here he is with Darren.
Thanks very much, Jim. Danny Heatley, you were rated number 1. You're selected number 2 by the Atlanta Thrashers in your hometown. It can't get much better than that.
No way. I mean, the first pick kind of went by, and the rumors were going around that was going to happen, and I kind of expected that, but I'm thrilled to be a Thrasher right now.
Some scouts describe you as a scoring machine. 27 goals last season. Now you get the chance to do that at the national level. You have to be excited.
Hopefully, yeah. Got some work to do in the weight room and things like that, but hopefully I can jump to the next level and contribute.
Congratulations on the day.
Thank you.
Craig?
Don Waddell, last year the Thrashers moving up to the number 1 spot to make Patrick Steffen number 1. Was there a lot of talk this year about speculating trades in this number 2 spot?
Yeah, there certainly was, Craig. We had a lot of options, and there's a lot of good players at the top, but the end result was that we felt that we took Patrick Steffen last year, that Danny Heatley would be a good complement to Patrick for the next 10 years.
Is it something that you're really trying to establish some good offensive talent in your lineup as well?
Yeah, goal scoring is at a premium, as we all know, in the National Hockey League. So anytime you can add a premier goal scorer like this, it's exciting for us.
Well, congratulations. Guys, back up to you.
Craig, in a year where we expect as many as 15 players from this 30-player first round to be drafted from Europe, many of them Russians, the first 2 are North Americans. Rick DiPietro, a goaltender from Boston University, and Danny Heatley out of the University of Wisconsin and from Calgary. The first of the expansion teams, this year's expansion teams to draft next, the Minnesota Wild, and Doug Risebrower up next.
Well, you know, it's interesting here, Minnesota. It's not like a regular expansion team coming in because obviously Minnesota's had NHL hockey before. And with the hiring of Jacques Lemaire, that would indicate to me that they want to win and they want to win early. I'm sure they're going to use the Florida Panthers as a bit of a model franchise. But I think there's going to be a lot of pressure. You know, the old saying in Minnesota is that people love hockey in Minnesota. They just don't like the NHL. So Dougie Risebrough's got his work cut out for him.
Already he's made moves on that list you just saw with Mike Vernon going to Calgary. Joe Juneau has been moved to Phoenix, and now the Minnesota Wild will pick a player, and I don't know that there's a Minnesotan available right now. Doug Risebrough's about to make his pick.
With yesterday's expansion draft and today's entry draft, these are significant days for the Minnesota Wild in bringing NHL hockey back to Minnesota. And it gives me personal pleasure to make that announcement here in Calgary, where I saw such strong support for the Flames for so many years, and know that that will continue. The Minnesota Wild, with their first selection in the 2000 entry draft and their first player ever, are pleased to select Marian Gaborik from Trenčín, Slovakia.
Marian Gaborik is a left winger who shoots left. He's a big man. He decided not to come to North America because he could play in the Czechoslovakian, or the Slovakian, excuse me, Elite League. He is the son of a furniture maker. His parents were able to make the trip with him today. Marian Gaborik is the #3 pick and the first member of the Minnesota Wild out of the entry draft.
Well, it's interesting. You know, people put a lot of pressure on these kids to do well at the World Junior Championship, and Marian didn't have a good WJC this year, but the fact remains he's considered one of the best snipers and a pure goal scorer, and that's what an expansion team needs. They want a kid who can step in and make an impact right off the bat. Whether or not this kid can do it, I'm not certain, but I think he made a wise decision by staying back and playing against older competition, playing against men, because that makes it a little bit easier when you come over to North America and you're playing against the best men in the world.
Part of the decision for these young men is that if you can stay in Slovakia or the Czech Republic and play in the Elite League against older men, it's worth staying. If you're going to make just a junior team, you're probably better off to come to North America, and that's why some of them make the decision to come to North America and train. Gaborik stayed home, was able to live in his hometown, a town of 80,000 in Slovakia, the same town that Marian and Marcel Hossa, who will be drafted later today, came from, and he's a childhood friend of theirs. It's the town that brought Miro Shatan to the NHL, and Ziggy Palffy as well came from the same team as the Minnesota Wild's Marian Gaborik. The last time the Minnesota had a pick, it was the North Stars, and they drafted a goaltender from Roseville, Minnesota, named Jeffrey Moan. 8 years later, Minnesota's back in the draft.
Let's hope they've done a little better this time.
8 years later, they're back in the draft, and from Slovakia.
No, there was even talk on the floor today that this kid could have gone #1 overall. So, I mean, he's obviously a very good prospect when you hear his name mentioned as a possible #1.
Well, in trying to get a consensus of who would be picked in the top 5, it was hard to do. There were 3 names that kept coming up, though, from all of the scouts: DiPietro, Heatley, and Gaborik, and they're now drafted. Marian Gaborik of the Minnesota Wild. Here's Craig Simpson.
Like a big day for your organization, obviously. How much was the fact that he played against older players contribute to you picking him?
Well, we felt that if anybody could come in and play right away, it was him, for that fact that he had played at World Championship level and on the national team. But, you know, it's still a development issue, and in Minnesota, they know the heartaches of rushing guys too early, so we're not going to do that here.
Did you have any thoughts of entertaining moving up or down in the draft and making a trade, possibly?
Well, we did, but we were really comfortable with what we were going to get. We felt that when we won the coin toss, that picking 3rd was significant, so we didn't really push it.
Well, congratulations and good luck in Minnesota.
Thank you.
Up to you guys.
Doug Risebrough back in familiar
team players on his roster before the expansion draft. So that tells you, you know, and he got Denis, the goaltender. What a great pickup for him.
The goaltender Denis was acquired from Colorado, and that's so that the Columbus Blue Jackets would then take Rick Tabarachi, and that prevented Colorado from losing a couple of defensemen that they didn't want to lose yesterday. So that was a shrewd move. They have Denis. They've also made a deal to get Jean-Luc Grandpierre from Buffalo. That was all part of taking Jeff Sanderson.
He's a big boy who has some toughness. Big boy, yeah.
So they like their defense. They now have a solid goaltender, and let's find out who Doug's ready to pick.
We'd like to thank the city of Calgary for tremendous hospitality, the Calgary Flames Hockey Club, to the fans of Calgary, and to the fans of Columbus, Ohio, welcome to the National Hockey League to Columbus. We'd also like to thank the Calgary Hitman Hockey Club for supplying us with Chris Nielsen and Brad Moran. The Columbus Blue Jackets are pleased and proud to select, with their first pick ever in the history of the Blue Jackets Hockey Club, from the Brampton Battalion, Radoslav Klesla.
Huge defenseman, 6'2", 200 pounds, shoots left. Radoslav Klesla is from Prague. He left home at the age of 16 on the advice of his agent to play in Sioux City, Iowa of the U.S. Hockey League, and then he moved into the Ontario Hockey League. Rafi Torres, his teammate with the battalion, says of Klesla, He's not afraid of nothing.
No, and you know what? He's been compared to Scott Stevens, and we all saw the type of playoff Scott Stevens had this year and the longevity he's had in his career. This is the type of guy who, when the puck is dumped into the corner, you don't want to put yourself between him and the boards, because if you do, there's a very good chance that you're going to look like part of the advertising they have on the boards. Case closed.
I think the Blue Jackets will be happy that Klesla was there in the number 4 spot. They couldn't have been guaranteed that he would be, but for an expansion team with a young man who's very confident, handles himself with great confidence, they now have Klesla to play on the blue line. They're going to try and sign Lyle Odeline, who they drafted from Phoenix. They have the aforementioned Jean-Luc Grandpierre. They have Bert Robertson, a young defender who they like from Edmonton. They're building from goal and defense out, and that's probably a wise move. You can tell that they have a blueprint for that.
Absolutely. And, you know, Doug MacLean wasn't there at the beginning of Florida, but he was there early in their incarnation and took them to a Stanley Cup. So Doug knows what it's like to have an expansion hockey team and how you get character-type players who can lead you over the course of a very long season. And I think that's the one thing they say about Klesla, that he's got a lot of character. And you look at the expansion draft yesterday, that's the one thing that really jumped out to me, was he was going after guys who would be able to go to war. And they obviously don't have a lot of scoring, but I think they've got the type of players who are going to make life miserable night after night after night when you play the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Well, they have matinee idol good looks on their first ever entry draft pick, and they can build their advertising around that. He is very adept at speaking the English language and answering questions and dealing with the media, and he's a very good hockey player, and that's the most important part. Rostislav Klesla is the first ever pick of the Columbus Blue Jackets in this 2000 entry draft. The New York Islanders are up again for the next pick they've got from Tampa. Right now, Klesla coming down off of the stage to the floor, and we'll get a chance to hear from he and the general manager of the Blue Jackets, Doug MacLean. 18-year-old Rostislav Klesla. Here's Darren.
Jim, thanks very much. Well, you go from the U.S. Hockey League to the Ontario Hockey League, where you were rookie of the Brampton Battalion's Rookie of the Year, to the National Hockey League. That's quite a jump in 3 years.
Yes, it is, you know, and can I say, I'm just looking forward to play in the NHL one day.
174 penalty minutes. You're a tough customer. Are you going to try and play that way in the National League?
Oh, well, you know, if I will have to, then I will have to do it, you know.
Rate this in terms of your career. You came over as a 16-year-old. This is as big as it gets.
Yeah, it is. It's just, you know, I was working on for this all my life, and this is a big step for me to play NHL one day.
All right, congratulations. The number 4 pick, Rostislav Klesla. Craig?
Thank you. Doug, obviously defense, the cornerstone of success. How happy are you to have him available?
I'll tell you, Don Boyd has loved him all year. We really believe this kid can come in right now and make our hockey team. We think he has a tremendous opportunity to make our team, and you don't have to look any further than the Stanley Cup playoffs to see how important strong D are. We think he's the best D, obviously, in the draft. We're absolutely thrilled with the pick.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
So 4 are down. The 5th one, the New York Islanders, they have made a trade. Roberto Luongo goes to the Florida Panthers. Look for a possibility of a trade here with the number 5th pick.
5th pick of the 2000 draft. By the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate our geographic neighbors, New Jersey Devils, on a wonderful championship. Congratulations. But for the 5th pick of the 2000 draft, the New York Islanders are pleased to choose from the Brampton Battalion in the Ontario Hockey League a left winger, Raffi Torres.
His physical dimensions remind me of Stan Smeel. If he can have a career like that Vancouver Canuck, who was also about the same size, it would be great for Raffi Torres. The Islanders have now had 15 picks in the top 5 in the last 10 years, and one would think they should be able to turn the corner. They have Rick DiPietro, and now they have Raffi Torres. His mother's from Peru, his father from Mexico, and he is one of 4 brothers from Markham, Ontario.
He may be built like Stan Smeel, but I'll tell you, his idol is Wendell Clark. He said to me yesterday that even today, when Wendell Clark steps on the ice, he said, I jump right out of my seat. And he plays the game hard. You know, people talk about him being small, 5'11". I don't consider that overly small. Not Theo Fleury type small, but he's 207 pounds, and this guy loves the physical game. On top of that, he can score 43 goals in 68 games this year. I think he brings a lot to the table for the New York Islanders.
43 goals, 91 points for the battalion. So 2 members of the Brampton Battalion have been drafted already, with Klesla and now Raffi Torres, who is a New York Islander. They used the top 5 picks that they acquired.
Raffi's a very level-headed kid, and you know, all these players go into interviews with teams, and he said to me yesterday that he walked into one interview and the first question they asked him was, how many kids do you have? He said, I almost fell out of my chair. I guess they're always trying to throw these kids a curveball, but I don't think Raffi was expecting that one.
I suppose this could be considered the new age player in the National Hockey League. His parents are immigrants to Canada. His father, Juan, came from Mexico. His mother, Ana, from Peru. They married in Canada after immigrating for a better life. They have 4 boys, and Raffi got into hockey, and he got in a big way, and now he's been drafted 5th overall to the New York Islanders, who are stockpiling young players like few franchises in the league.
They certainly have. What Milbury does is he gets all these good young guys, and then he doesn't necessarily keep them all. He uses some of them in trade bait, as we've obviously seen today. And, you know, a lot of guys that they build a reputation as just simply doing one thing. Mike seems to spread it out a bit.
As Craig alluded to just before our break, the trade has been made official now, and that the Islanders have moved Roberto Luongo and Olli Jokinen, who they got last year from Los Angeles, to Florida from Mark Parrish and Oleg Kvasha. So they've traded 2 goaltenders today, drafted another. Now they've drafted Raffi Torres. Yes, it's a busy day for the Islanders. Here's Raffi with Darren.
Jim, the Brampton Battalion with more players ranked in this draft than any other team in the world. They go back-to-back 4 and 5. Raffi Torres, the interviews are over. All the talking is done. How do you feel?
I can't even feel my legs right now, but no, it feels awesome. It feels great to be over with, and just happy to be where I am right now.
You're described as a very intense player. You've got the size to go along with that. How eager now are you looking forward to your first NHL camp?
Oh, I can't wait. You know, I just want to get back, and I want to hit the gym, and I want to hit the ice, and I just want to keep working on it and working on my game. So really, really excited to get going.
Congratulations. Now let's find out what your general manager thinks. Craig?
Mike Raffi Torres, another good offensive player that gives you a good stockpile of youth. What do you feel that made this young man special?
We think his ability to score goals is exceptional. We've watched him quite a bit this year, and because we thought near the end we thought we'd be around 5, and we saw a really competitive kid who had a real nose for the net.
A lot of changes within your organization. The trade Roberto Luongo going, as long as Olli Jokinen as well. What do you expect now from your hockey club?
Well, we were really shifting assets here. You know, we have a different type of goalie in DiPietro. We were really wrenched over the loss of Luongo, who's just a quality kid and a quality goaltender. But we also needed to fill some holes, particularly in the middle, which we think Kvasha does. And Parrish had 26 goals last year, and that's not bad in this league in this day and age.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Once again, the New York Islanders, the busiest franchise in the first round, Jim.
You have had more interviews with Mike Milbury over the last 2 years than anybody else, as he keeps coming up to the podium. And he's now had 2 picks, including Raffi Torres. And what's Florida going to do with Luongo? More importantly, what are they going to do with Trevor Kidd? They've already moved Mike Vernon. That question to be answered in a while, but first to pick number 6 and the Nashville Predators. Perhaps they're picking lower than they'd like to. Many people, Mike, say when you come into as an expansion team, you should draft in the top 5 for the first 5 years. But David Poile and company have done such a good job that they're drafting 6th for the 2nd consecutive year.
It'll be interesting to see if they hold on to this pick. Before the draft, I was told to look for Nashville to do something, but it looks like they're going to keep the pick. And David just loves the draft. He's one of those guys who's not a big wheeler dealer, but loves to build through the draft.
The Nashville Predators are very happy to be here in Calgary, and we thank all the Calgarians for their wonderful hospitality. We'd also like to say hello to all of our great fans in Nashville that are watching today. We're very proud as our 3rd year to select as our first pick in this entry draft from Prince Albert, Scott Hartnell.
Played in Prince Albert. He's from Lloydminster, Alberta. Scott Hartnell was a 17-year-old captain of the Prince Albert Raiders. I think he is the quintessential Canadian hockey player in this draft, in that he doesn't necessarily score as much as some of the European players, but he is character through and through, a hard-working, show-up-every-night winger, Scott Hartnell.
Well, if there's such a thing as a kid who looks like a hockey player, this guy just looks like a hockey player. And, you know, they talk about his leadership, and that's what you want from a good young kid. You love to bring that type of leadership into your organization. And he plays, as you say, a very multi-purpose game, can go to the net, plays it tough. He's not going to, you know, come into this league and earn a reputation as a guy who beats the daylights out of everybody, but he's going to be a guy who won't back down from a lot of people. And Nashville needs that type of personality in their organization.
His teammates in PA speak glowingly of Scott Hartnell. He comes from a family that's very concerned with education. His father is a retired school principal. 2 of his brothers played collegiate hockey in the NCAA. He chose to go the Western Hockey League route, went to Prince Albert, but he didn't forget about his education, insisted upon by his family. He was the Scholastic Player of the Year with the Prince Albert Raiders. So now the Nashville Predators up front with David Legwand and Scott Hartnell to build around for the future, and a number of other players are on the cusp of being very good.
That's a very good foundation. You know, Legwand, I think, is going to be a guy who's going to be a real star in the NHL, and I thought he showed glimpses of that this season. So now he's got a young buddy to start hanging with, and it'll be interesting and fun to watch these 2 kids develop together.
Let's go down to Darren again.
Jim, thanks very much. Scott Hartnell, congratulations. What do you know about the Nashville Predators?
Oh, they're going to be a good club in a few years, and I'm just so happy to be here, and it's just a great day for all the draftees today.
Well, you're one of the youngest Western Hockey League captains of the Prince Albert Raiders. You're also described as a very intimidating player. Do you think that's going to sell in the National Hockey League?
Let's hope so. That's mostly my game, so I'll just try and bring that every night and hopefully make the club soon.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Craig?
David Poyle, the book on Scott Hartnell, captain material, good character. How much did that factor into your choice?
Well, I think character always factors in on it. A good Western Canadian boy there with some leadership qualities, young captain at age 18, a lot of grit, and type of player that I think our scouts like to say you can win with. You can win with in the playoffs. After watching those Stanley Cup playoffs this year, I think Scott Hartnell is the type of guys that can get the job done. So I think he really fits in good for what we've done in the first couple of years, and should be a real good complementary player to what we got going on in Nashville.
Any chance we could see him in the lineup this season?
Oh, I would love that. Let's sit down and talk to him and see if he can get prepared that good. You know, we always take a little bit of time with these guys, but that would be fantastic.
Well, congratulations, David. Up to you guys.
Mike, I know that the scouts, especially the Western scouts with the Nashville Predators, really wanted Scott Hartnell this year. They went to Ontario for David Legwand. Last year they got Brian Finley out of the OHL, and the scouts were really lobbying for Hartnell, and they got their way.
Well, I mean, he's such a great kid, and we move on to Boston now, and this is an interesting one because it's Harry Sinden. It could be his last draft as general manager of the hockey team. Might be handing the GM duties over to Mike O'Connell. And, you know, you think he'd like to go out and make a bit of an impact in his last draft.
Well, he's got 2 picks. He had an option on a pick that belonged to New Jersey at the 27th spot, and has exercised the option to use that pick in this draft. So a pair of picks for Harry Sinden. Mike O'Connell will be the incoming general manager. Scott Bradley is the man who's been in charge of preparing this team for the draft. Last season, the Bruins picked 21st and took a player, Nick Boynton, who'd been drafted 2 years earlier and went unsigned. And there seems to be a considerable amount of discussion at the Boston table over what they should do now. And this is a point in the draft where, because so many players are gone, some teams have to review and rewrite their list.
Exactly. And, you know, if you're the Boston Bruins, the one thing you've got to be most concerned with, obviously, is defense. You've already lost Raymond Bourque. Don Sweeney looks like he's going to leave the team as an unrestricted free agent. I doubt very much they have the type of money to pay him that he will command on the open market. They've got some youngsters, Nick Boynton, Jonathan Girard, who appear to be on the cusp of being ready to move in. Now, what I've told about Boynton is that he may need another year in the minors, and if Nick's listening, that's probably going to be the worst thing he's ever heard. But the fact remains, he is a very good prospect, and they want a guy who's going to be in for the long haul, not a guy who's going to be a flash in the pan. And Boynton looks like the guy who they would like to be have for the long haul.
Looks like the decision is made. Will they start rebuilding the defense depleted by the loss of Ray Bourque?
Good morning. With the 7th selection of the 2003 draft, the Boston Bruins select from Leksand defenseman Lars Jonsson.
What would the National Hockey League's entry draft be without a smooth skating defenseman from Sweden named Lars being drafted? So indeed, they go for a defenseman. And you know the Bruins' track record of drafting defensemen all the way back to having Dallas Smith on their team, and Bobby Orr and Raymond Bourque and Kyle McLaren and Hal Gill is very good. For some reason or another, they know defensemen, and Lars Jonsson is 6'1", 198 pounds, and obviously he'll fill out a little bit. The first Swede taken in this draft. Should be good offensively, but hasn't shown that yet.
Well, he really moved up, and you know, Hockey News had him ranked at number 23. But as you say, look at their defense now. They've got so many young players, and Kyle McLaren, does he become the general on the blue line now at a very young age?
Well, I think he's going to have to. And the aforementioned defensemen you talked about in the minors, in Jonathan Girard and Nick Boynton, one of them at least is going to have to play now. This young man likely won't be rushed along. He didn't make his country's national junior team. And as we said, he's been touted as an extremely good skater who can lug the puck up and should be able to put up offensive numbers. The Boston Bruins, with one of 2 picks we think they'll use in this year's draft, select Lars Jonsson from Sweden as their #1 pick. There are at least, or there could be as many as 15 or 16 Europeans, including the Swedes, drafted in this first round. And what we haven't seen yet, Mike, is the rush on the Russian underage, under 18 team that we expect to come, and maybe it will start now.
Absolutely, and I think what you're going to find is because it's taken this long to get to one, we may just go one after another for a little while. Jonsson's a very good he's got, as you said, offensive instincts. And I think every team looks to have at least one guy who can be a quarterback on the power play. And although he probably won't step in and play this year, he looks like a guy who's going to be a point man for the Bruins, a guy who will get a lot of ice time playing the power play on a regular shift.
Lars Jonsson is the #7 pick. Here's Mike O'Connell with Craig Simpson.
Good. Mike, good to see you. Obviously a big day for the Boston Bruins, a good young defenseman. How does he fit into your plans for the future?
Well, talking with Lars, you know, he is going to play in the Elite League next year, and but we just couldn't pass up what he can offer. He's very offensive. He's a powerful skater, and you don't find that too often in the draft.
With the loss of Raymond Bourque and Don Sweeney, does he fill a void that you obviously need as well?
Well, it's going to take some time, I think, for Lars. We expect him to play in the Elite League next year, but after that, we'll see.
Congratulations, Lars. Congratulations as well.
Well, it's been an interesting start to the 2000 entry draft. The Islanders have made a couple of deals. A goaltender, Rick DiPietro, has been named the first overall pick, the first goaltender ever taken first in the NHL draft. Scott Hartnell is off to Nashville, and Lars Jonsson is a Boston Bruin. Who will Tampa pick when we come back?
That we've been shown here this week. And we also want to welcome all of our fans back in Tampa who are attending the draft day party today, sponsored by our radio station WDAE at Barnacles in Brandon. The Tampa Bay Lightning Hockey Club is pleased to select from the Erie Otters of the OHL right wing Nikita Alexeev.
The first of the Russians to be drafted from Murmansk, Nikita Alexeev. This is an interesting pick. All through the week as we talked to different scouts, some had him late in the first round, but many were so excited about his finish to the season, his size at 6'5", 215 pounds, and how well he did at Central Scouting's fitness testing in Toronto, that there were many teams that had him in the top 5. He ends up going to Tampa as the #8 pick, Nikita Alexeev.
Well, you know, they say size matters in the NHL, and this is a perfect example of that. This kid's 6'5", 215 pounds. Every team loves to have a big, strong man to play in the middle, and this guy looks like he could fill the role. And,
well, Tampa has an exciting superstar in Vincent Lecavalier to be their #1 center. This is a man who might be able to play on his wing.
Well, and they've also signed Brad Richards, who's the Canadian Major Junior Hockey League Player of the Year this year and had such an outstanding Memorial Cup. And so when you can get this type of quality guys up front, you've got to feel very good.
Tampa is a team obviously in transition, not only at the ownership and management level, but on the ice. They used 41 different players, including 14 rookies last season. They weren't very stable in goal after making a draft day deal last year and getting Dan Cloutier. They've gone out today and acquired Kevin Weeks from the New York Islanders. And now they've drafted Nikita Alexeev, a hulking forward in the mold of Andrei Nazarov, who plays in Calgary, but we're told with better hands. Rick Dudley is the general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and here he is with Craig.
Rick, it's not often you get a player 6'5", a good solid defenseman with some speed. What does that mean to your franchise?
Well, we think the combination of speed and size was what was so appealing about him. And the other factor is that he's improved so much. He came from a program in the Soviet Union where he hardly played, went to Erie and improved all the time he was there. and we like the kid. We like him a lot. He's a very bright kid, so we're pretty happy about it.
It's taken some time to turn the corner, but you've got some good offensive players coming up in the system. The future must look pretty bright for Tampa Bay.
We think so. We're pretty happy with what we've been able to do. We're a lot deeper. We have a lot more assets. Everybody talks about assets, but we now have a lot of assets, and they're young, so it's important.
Well, good luck. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Craig.
There are many scouts who believe this man, Nikita Alexeev, is the best player in this draft. Now, we did say that it was hard to get a consensus on who the top 5 would be, but he showed up in several of the top 5 consensus that I got. Here's Darren.
Nikita Alexeev, 6'5". Rick Dudley talked about getting size, but he also gets leadership. I know you're happy to be going to Tampa Bay, a team where you think you'll be able to play pretty much next season.
I'm pretty excited, and I'm pretty excited that this team picked me. I just can't say anything. I just, I have to prove myself in training camp. I have to worry about that, and, I'm pretty excited.
Pretty good season with the Erie Otters. Congratulations, Nikita.
Thanks a lot. Yep, thank you.
Draft continues. Let's take you upstairs. Jim.
Looking a little bit like Chris Pronger there, wasn't he?
Out of the Erie Otters organization, his general manager Sherwood Basson won't be at a loss for words in describing Nikita Alexeev, and his coach Dave McQueen has done a nice job with him. Nikita Alexeev is a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and now it's a time of great excitement for the people in this building, and believe me, it is almost full for an entry draft in a hockey-mad city in Canada. The number 9 pick belongs to the Calgary Flames.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I think the Flames did an excellent job in going out and hiring Craig Button, who did such a fine job as director of player personnel with the Dallas Stars. He's a guy who's been raised in a hockey family. Now, Craig makes the move to bring in Vernon. Vernon and Brathwaite, we talked about earlier, gives them a very solid 1-2 punch in net. The one thing about the Calgary Flames is they've got to make the playoffs. They just can't go another year without making the playoffs, and I think that's got to be a priority for Craig.
And this draft probably won't help them in that regard. Lanny McDonald is vice president of the Calgary Flames and a very popular local personality.
The Calgary Flames are extremely proud to call Calgary home. And while we salute the players of the past and the people that have built this franchise, we look forward to a new beginning. We are unveiling our new jersey. That means new look, new attitude, and new direction. And the gentleman that will help take us there is our Vice President and General Manager, Craig Button. At this time, I'd like to introduce, so he can make our selection, a gentleman that has been with us for the past 30 years and been a large part of why we have been successful to start with. A person that needs no introduction, but especially in the hockey circles, but he is Deputy Doug, you got it, our head of our draft, Ian McKenzie.
Worked for a great organization for 30 years, and it's going to even be a prouder day when I announce that from our own Calgary hitman, the Calgary Flames select Brent Krahn, goaltender.
What an exciting moment in this building. A Calgary hitman, a native of Winkler, Manitoba, another big goaltender, 6'4", Brent Krahn. Did you think he would go this high?
Absolutely, Jim. You know, I've been so impressed with this kid. I met with him yesterday, and if you ever walk away from meeting a youngster, I wanted to adopt the kid. He's got such a great personality. You know what I like about him? 33-6 record, and I think the hitman made a big error this year in bringing in an older player to use in the playoffs. This kid played so well, and in my way of thinking, deserved to be their playoff goaltender. And I think the goaltending change they made is one of the big reasons why they didn't win the championship in the Western League, as everybody anticipated they would. And Brent Krahn would never come out and say so, but I'm certain deep inside he feels the same way. Now he has a chance to stay in Calgary. He told me yesterday he heard he may stay here, and he's very excited about that.
Well, Craig Button identified as soon as he became the general manager of the Calgary Flames in an area that he wanted to shore up, and there's Craig having to watch from on high with the president of the Calgary Flames, Ron Bremner. He identified that goaltending was an area that he wanted to work on, and he's got Mike Vernon and now He'll have Verney to teach Brent Krahn a little bit about the game, and he'll be very close at hand as they try and watch his development. Brent Krahn, he's a big man at 6'4". Slavastrana was the man you mentioned that they made a trade for, the veteran goaltender from Slovakia and Moose Jaw that came in here and played a lot in the playoffs. But Brent Krahn is a great personality and obviously a popular choice.
You know, it's funny, when I was talking with him yesterday, he takes his goaltending thing very personally. He looked down at DiPietro and said, hey, I hear this guy can play the puck, but can he stop it? He said, I'm very confident in my ability to stop pucks. He said, I may not be able to handle it as well, but I have no doubt that I can stop the puck at the National League level. Now he's going to get the chance.
Southern Manitoba has been a place where we've seen some good goalies come from. I think of Ed Belfour from Carman, now from Winkler. Brent Krahn, who is now a member of the Calgary Flames, right out of the Calgary Hitman organization. Calgary, by the way, has announced today that they've sold 13,022 tickets, just short of their 14,000 goal. And in the next week, I think it's obvious now that the Flames are here, and many hope the Flames are here forever with Brent Krahn in goal. Darren?
Jim, the ovation was loud when Danny Heatley was selected in the #2 spot by the Atlanta Thrashers. It was just as loud when Brent Krahn's name was announced from the Calgary Hitmen. Did you have your fingers crossed waiting for the #9 selection in Calgary?
Oh, yeah. You know, I was hoping I'd go to Calgary. Calgary's a great city. I love the people of Calgary. It's just unbelievable, and I can't even put my thoughts into it right now. I'm so excited.
Winkler is excited as well. That's your hometown. Will the Calgary Flames tell you, look, forget about rugby. There's no more rugby. I know it's a passion of yours.
Oh, yeah. You know, I mean, my brother loves it more than I do, you know, and I'm not playing it this summer. But, you know, geez, I'll be playing it this summer, though, for a little bit with my friends.
6'4". He's a big goaltender. Good luck to the scorers who try and beat this man. Craig?
Lanny McDonald, the host city for this draft. What a special moment for this club.
Well, it really is, especially when we bring back Mike Vernon to start with. Then we draft the local boy, Brent Krahn. We're extremely pleased. We had our fingers crossed, hoping that he would still be there, and it certainly worked out for us. And this is a great day for our organization.
With everyone trying to focus on keeping this team here and selling tickets, it had to feel like a special moment listening to the crowd's reaction.
Well, it certainly was, and I think because of him playing here and knowing what he's capable of, you cannot help but be excited for the franchise, especially today.
Thanks very much, Lanny. Good luck.
My pleasure.
Craig, the face of the Calgary Flames changes with Mike Vernon and now Brent Krahn as their goaltenders of the present and the future. Goaltenders have been front and center. Two of them drafted in the top 9. Next from Calgary in the 2000 entry draft, the Chicago Blackhawks and their new GM, Mike Smith, with a pair of picks.
Hey, Mark, you order all this food?
Yeah, anywhere.
Call a timeout and make a deal on the floor. He may have had a deal done already that he wants to work on and announce. He may be uncertain about his pick. You see Mike is on the phone. He was an innovator. Some called him a kooky general manager in Winnipeg, but he's done a great job, and he was one of the first to go overseas and begin drafting Russians.
I'll tell you, I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves for being a good general manager, and you can see the graphic of the players that he was responsible for drafting. And, you know, they made so much about the fact that he studied Russia, studied in Russian, and was a bit of a kooky guy to get along with. They lose the fact that he's been a good GM, not only with the Winnipeg Jets, but also with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think he left the Maple Leafs sitting very well for Pat Quinn when he left their organization. I think he's got to make an impact here, though, in his first year. He's a guy who's getting back into it. The Blackhawks, you know, they don't have much in the organization. Hockey News Future Watch ranked them number 26th as far as prospects that they had in the organization. They've got a couple good ones in Steve McCarthy, a defenseman, and Mark Bell. But I think that Smith has got to make an impact in his first year in the draft.
When Mike Smith was in Winnipeg in 1989, there were only 18 Russians taken in the draft. 2 of them went to Winnipeg, and Mike Smith was criticized for that. By 1992, there were 45 Russians taken in the draft, and he was an innovator of sorts. And at one point, he took far too many of them, people thought, in one draft. So I don't suppose we'd be surprised at all if both of his picks here were Europeans, partly because the Russian under-18 team that was so good, even though it didn't win the World Championship in a loss to Finland, has so many players that haven't yet been picked.
Well, there's so much skill still available in this draft, and I think a lot of people are surprised that the Russian players who were so highly touted for this year haven't been picked yet, a lot of them. And Mike likes his Russians, and they are very, very good players.
Pavel Vorobiev is the #1 rated European player, and he's yet to be picked. The Blackhawks, thanks to the deal last year that Vancouver gave them a pick and Brian McCabe so that they could get the Sedins, have 2 picks. The next 2, but they have to take a timeout to talk about it, so we'll take a timeout and come back with Mike Smith and the Blackhawks picks from Calgary and
The Chicago Blackhawks are proud to take from Togliatti Lada Mikhail Yakubov.
Dale Talon himself, a #1 pick in the entry draft. The Vancouver Canucks in 1970 announces the Blackhawks pick of Mikhail Yakubov. He's a centerman that shoots left, 6'3", 195 pounds. He was very good at the Five Nations tournament. He ended up being ranked 2nd amongst the Europeans on Central Scouting's rankings behind Pavel Vorobiev, and maybe that's why they took a timeout to decide which one of these slick Russians they'd take.
Well, the good thing about him is he can put up numbers. He's a good goal scorer, scored 3 goals at the Five Nations Cup in 4 games, had 2 assists, but he's best known as a playmaker. He's a guy who can make the guys that play with him better hockey players, and you always like to have guys like that. And as I say, he's not just a playmaker. He can score goals.
Here's Mike Smith with Craig Simpson.
Mike, a lot of time to take this pick. I know a lot of discussions at your table. What do you feel about your pick now and his future?
Well, first of all, we took the time out because we're deciding on our next pick whether or not we're going to trade number 11, move down, and we're going to take our 11th pick as well. Yakubov's a tall, rangy center type of player, has the potential to control the puck, control the play. And we're a little surprised. We didn't even have a nameplate for him, so he wasn't somebody we expected to get at 10. But hopefully, it turns out to be a good fortune for us.
Number 11, what's the focus of your team now? You've got a good playmaking forward. You're looking for some defense now?
We're taking the player we think's the next best in the draft at 11. You'll have to wait till 11.
All right, Mike. Thanks. Good luck.
Not even in the seconds before the pick can we pry it out of Mike Smith.
No, I've never heard that one before.
The Chicago Blackhawks now use the number 11 pick. That was acquired from Vancouver with Brian McCabe, so the Canucks could move up last year and steal the show by getting this to back in this draft. They have Mikhail Yakubov, and now they have the 11th pick. And it is interesting that he slid this far as the 2nd-ranked European, but part of the reason that he was able to move down is because of the goaltenders going early, with DiPietro going number 1 and Brent Krahn probably going a little higher than many had speculated. In this draft, there were so many interchangeable parts, it depended on who was picking where. That would mean that some other players would slip because everybody had different needs and players that they rated more highly than others.
Well, and we found out as we walked around the last couple days in Calgary that everybody seemed to have a different notion of who were the top-notch players, and it wouldn't, it doesn't surprise me that guys who were rated a little bit later have slid towards the top of the draft, because people feel that this is a very even draft. And one scout told me that no matter who goes first overall this year, 5 years from now, you'll be able to look back at this draft and say a better player went later than him. So that's the type of even talent we have in the draft.
Some have compared this draft to the 1989 pool, and that was where Adam Foote was the first pick of the 2nd round. And in this draft, that would be a late 1st-round pick. The Chicago Blackhawks have Steve McCarthy on the way, an excellent puck-moving defenseman. He would be their best of their draft picks on the way right now. And now they have Mikhail Yakubov, and they have another pick to come in moments from now.
Mark Bell's another good one. He won a Memorial Cup with the Ottawa 67s, a very skilled player. And when I watched him play junior, it amazed me how slick he could be in traffic. He's a guy who goes to the danger zones, and that's what you like from your forwards, guys who are willing to pay a price. Mark Bell's that type of player, so I think he's going to be an impact player for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Much of the speculation around the Blackhawks this week has been around Alexei Yashin of the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Senators have said they're not going to make a move until the arbitrator's decision on the future of Alexei Yashin, but I think part of the reason that the Blackhawks would be a team mentioned in that speculation is because of Mike Smith and his affinity for Russian players.
Now, it wouldn't surprise us all if he goes with Vorobiev here. Vorobiev's an interesting guy who no player in the draft had a better second half than he did. He went from number 40th, being ranked number 40th, to number 1 among the European skaters.
Yaroslav, right winger, Pavel Vorobiev.
Good call, Mike. Pavel Vorobiev, you mentioned ranked 40th midseason. How can a player go from being 40th ranked at midseason to the #1 ranked European by the end?
Well, there's really no logical explanation for that other than the kid obviously is very determined, and you know, they scout Europe a lot more closely, Jim, than they used to, but still perhaps not as much as we scout the North American hockey players. When I saw this kid standing yesterday during the Meet the Prospects, I looked at him, I thought, is this guy 40 years old? I want to see this guy's birth certificate. He doesn't look young enough to be in this draft.
Pavel Vorobiev, he's actually from Kazakhstan. He's a right winger who shoots left, 6 feet, 183 pounds, and he was excellent at the under-18 World Championship, and that's part of the reason that he moved up. And that is a tournament that all of the scouts go to. It's more important for the scouts now than the World Junior Championship, where many of the players have already been drafted. At the under-18, all of the players are prospects, and he might have been the best one at that tournament in Switzerland. So Pavel Vorobiev completes back-to-back Russian drafts for the Chicago Blackhawks, and while many will say, oh, that's only because Mike Smith is running the show, I think had it been another team at 10 and 11, Mike, drafting back-to-back, might have been 2 Russians anyway, because those are the best players available now.
Absolutely, and unfortunately Mike Smith has that tag that he has to carry around like an albatross, but as I say, you've got to get beyond that, and the smart hockey people are able to get beyond the fact that he does like to draft Russian hockey players, and I think what Mike Smith likes to do, even more than drafting Russian hockey players, is draft true NHL prospects, and it seems as though he's done that this year.
Loves skilled players. Yakubov and now Vorobiev. Well, you've heard about the deal earlier with Roberto Luongo and Olli Jokinen heading to Florida. Oleg Kvasha and Mark Parrish headed to the New York Islanders in a deal that didn't involve draft picks but was made on draft day. The man who now has Roberto Luongo in his stable is Brian Murray, and here he is with Craig Simpson.
Brian, a busy day for you before you get up to the podium. How do you feel about the trade for Roberto Luongo?
Oh, I feel terrific. I think anytime you're going to try and win championships, and I think you see the 2 finalists this year, you see the Toronto Maple Leafs turn around because of goaltending, and historically, if you don't have the great goaltender, you don't have a chance to win, and I think Roberto is that caliber of guy, and I remember sitting here 2 years ago watching this young man go down to the podium after being picked 4th and thought, how can we ever get a guy like this, and we were able to do it.
Does it change your focus now here on draft day of who you're looking for in the draft?
Well, now we just have to get players. We did give up 2 good young players, 2 forwards that are very, very offensive minded, and so we'd probably look for somebody that can score the odd goal.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Good luck.
Thanks, Craig.
Brian Murray and the Florida Panthers. They were busy today, although they don't have a first pick in the draft. The next pick belongs to the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, and their pick is up next.
For his great scouting ability, and as you said, he loves to build through the draft, and I think that's a good way to go. You look at the championship teams, the Jersey Devils obviously are a great example of that. They build through the draft.
I'm very proud to select from Dynamo Moskva, centerman Alexei Smirnov.
And that would be a predictable pick because we now are at a stage of the draft, and we've mentioned this before, there are a number of Russian forwards that are available in this draft, and they are some of the best players, and none of them were taken very early. But now 3 in a row have gone. 2 to Chicago, Yakubov and Vorobiev. And now Alexei Smirnov is a left winger. He shoots left, and that's odd for the Russians, isn't it? He plays the wing that he shoots from. 6'3", 211 pounds. He's one of the top players, but he had poor showings in a couple of the tournaments, and maybe that's why he was 12th and not 4th or 5th.
Well, what's interesting about this draft, too, is that you look at a lot of these kids who play over in Europe, and scouts will tell you, you know, this guy's got a great offensive upside. Then you look at his stats. 4 goals in 10 games. It's like,
where's that offensive upside?
Where's that up? But, you know, a lot of times they end up playing against older competition, and where the scouts really see the offensive upside is during practice and during exhibition games. But they say that about this kid, that he's got the very good offense, and it will come out over time.
Alexei Smirnov is the first pick of the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. They've done a nice job of putting together their defense now with Vitaly Vishnevsky, who was taken out of the draft. They have Pavel Trinka. They have Nicholas Havlid. They reacquired Oleg Tverdovsky last year. So it's not a surprise that they would move to the front line and add a forward in Alexei Smirnov. Here's Darren.
Pierre Gauthier, 6'3", 211 plus pounds. Some tell me he's bigger than that. Does he play bigger than that?
Wow, what a great talent this kid is. Sometimes you look at this kid and you think he's ready to play in the NHL. He's got pure talent, power centerman. we're really excited.
Were you surprised that he hung around to the number 12 position?
Well, this was the kind of draft where we really didn't know what was going to happen. There's a lot of good kids, and there's been a lot of good selections, but we're very happy.
All right, Pierre, thanks very much, and good luck the rest of the way.
The Montreal Canadiens with a pair of picks in the draft, and it strikes me that now that the Canadiens are outside of Toronto, like the other teams in Canada, without a superstar, with need for a star player out of the draft, this is an extremely important draft with a pair of picks for Réjean Houle.
Well, it certainly is. There are a lot of people who are surprised that Réjean Houle still has the job and is making these picks, but I think the team had such a great finish last year and almost made the playoffs that it saved his job. Now, if he's going to stay in the position of general manager of the hockey club, he's got to do something big here. He's got to pick players who are good early. They've got to make an impact. They've got Mike Ribeiro, who started the year with Montreal last season, but didn't look too good at the NHL level. Maybe they jumped the gun a little bit early. And whether or not Asham can step in and play remains to be seen. He looked like he was pretty good last year in the times they called him.
Réjean Houle, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens.
Bonjour à tous. Le club de hockey canadien.
The Canadiens go with the defenseman, Ron Haney, whose home is in Bolton, Connecticut, a confident young man who's a defenseman that shoots left, 6'2", 190 pounds. He played at the World Junior Championship and went into the U.S. national program and spent 2 years in Michigan training with the national team before moving to the University of Massachusetts at Lowell.
Well, and you know, the good thing is that there were some rumors that they were going to lose Eric Weimerich, who's an American defenseman as well, and maybe that's one of the reasons they hung on to him, to have an older American player who can help this kid make the transition to not only the National Hockey League, but to living in Montreal.
Well, if he doesn't know what pressure is like, he'll find out about it when he moves under the magnifying glass in Montreal and begins playing with the Canadiens. And the Canadiens really need Ron to develop and be a good player. The only notable player from their last 7 drafts is Saku Koivu, and he's probably attained a higher status in the NHL than he's earned because he's been out of the lineup so much. But there is great hope for young defenseman Ron Haney. He was born in '81, so he's a year older than many of the players in this draft because he's a college player at 19 years old. He can go back to college at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, but he's a year older and perhaps has a year of maturity more than some of the others in this draft, and here he is with Derek.
Jim, thanks very much. Ron Haney, you're described as a very physical player, and you look for that big open ice hit. You're going to be able to do that at the national level?
I hope so. You know, I think I got to get a little bigger before I'm going after the big guys out there who weigh a couple more pounds than I do, but we'll see what happens.
American-born player, obviously going the college route, but you know a lot about the Montreal Canadiens just based on their tremendous history.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. We watched them beat the Hartford Whalers at home a couple of times in some good 7-game series when I was a kid, so I know a lot about it. It's a good, it's a great hockey city with a great winning tradition. I'm looking forward to bringing them back.
Congratulations, Ron.
Thank you very much.
Craig?
Réjean Houle, you use a pick to pick a defenseman who has a lot of good potential. How do you feel about where he fits into your lineup?
Well, we wanted to have a moving puck defenseman. He's a young player who's pretty fast, can join the rush, and we feel that in the future in our organization we need that kind of players.
Is this one of those picks where you might see Haney coming in and playing fairly soon?
Well, we'll talk to him and see with his family what he wanted to do, but we know that he's got enough talent to be able to make it pretty fast.
All right, congratulations, Réjean.
Thank you very much.
Jim, back up to you.
Well, the next pick actually belonged to the Carolina Hurricanes, but it's changed. As we speculated earlier, Sandis Ozolinsh is on his way to Carolina in a deal that will see the Avalanche, masters of the draft, take the next pick at 14.
But Raymond Bourque's not going to play forever, contrary to popular belief. And Sandis Ozolinsh is very much like Sergei Zubov. And when the Rangers traded Zubov, they've never recovered.
From the Czech Republic, Václav Neterost.
Well, in drafting Milan Hajduk, they get very good players from the Czech Republic. Václav Neterost is a centerman who shoots left. He's 6'1", 187 pounds. He played a very important defensive role for the gold medal winning team at the World Junior Championship in the Czech Republic's win over the Russians, and maybe they're looking for a third-line checking center to go in behind the great centers that they have if they're able to keep Joe Sakic and have him in behind a Peter Forsberg or in that other order.
Well, you know, the one thing, the Colorado Avalanche won a Stanley Cup and they had all kinds of depth. But since they've won that cup, that's been the one question mark in the organization. Their number 3 and number 4 line players haven't been as good. They've never replaced Mike Keane. They've never replaced Mike Ricci. They've had some decent guys in there, but not quite to the caliber of the Stanley Cup year. Neterost is a guy who the Hockey News had ranked number 11, so he goes a little bit later than we thought he might, but he's a guy who's going to be a very good player.
Is he a checker? Is there an offensive upside? Let's find out from Pierre Lacroix, the man who drafted him. Here he is with Craig.
Pierre, maybe explain to us your motivation, the deal for Sandis Ozolinsh. You bring in Nolan Pratt, and now you make this this selection. What's your thoughts?
Well, we're at a stage of our franchise that we need to really prepare for the future. We're at a transition mode right now, and the fact that we've been able to put under contract Ray Bourque, and also the fact that Martin Skula has performed like he did over the last season gives us this opportunity to be in a better position for the future. We're sad, you know, Sandis, a great player. He's been a great member of this franchise for the last 4 years, and all we have to say is to wish him the best of luck.
Is Neterost the type of player who could fit in fairly quickly in your hockey club?
Yeah, our scouts have a very high opinion of the kid, and we're just looking forward for that.
Okay, thanks very much, Pierre.
My pleasure.
Vaslav Neterost had only 14 points in 41 games, but was tremendous defensively. Sandis Ozolinsh is gone. He mentioned Martin Skula, and he did have a great rookie season, which allowed the trade of Sandis Ozolinsh, and they get Nolan Pratt as well. The next pick is 15th overall, and it is the Buffalo Sabres, and they have one of the best young organizations in the league. They've been able to deal some of their young players and picks because they've done so well at these drafts.
Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but the Hockey News is going to pick Mika Norinen as our minor league prospect of the year. This guy's an amazing goaltender who had 6 shutouts in the playoffs this year. So you know they're set pretty well with Biron, Hasek, and Norinen. They've also got Kalanen, Brian Campbell, a couple of young studs on defense. And we see the way that Brian Rafalski played for the New Jersey Devils this year. He's a slick skating defenseman. I'm certain that's going to open the door for Brian Campbell to step in perhaps a little bit quicker than he may have done.
There's Lindy Ruff, the coach of the Sabres. Don Luce, director of player personnel. Darcy Regier is their general manager. They made a nifty deal yesterday in giving up Jean-Luc Grandpierre, another young prospect, so that Columbus would take Dwayne Rolison and Jeff Sanderson in the draft, thereby eliminating the prospect of losing defensemen like Jason Woolley and Richard Smellick in the expansion draft. They've drafted well, but they've given up some young players, and they'd like to restock with a good pick here.
The Buffalo Sabres would like to thank the Calgary Flames, great fans of the city of Calgary, as well as our great fans back in Buffalo.
The Buffalo Sabres are pleased and proud for our 15th selection, first round, to select Artem Krykov from Yaroslav, Russia.
And so the string of Russians being drafted continues here. Europeans, we had Neterost from the Czech Republic, and now the Buffalo Sabres have gone overseas as well, and this is very predictable. As we said, there could be as many as 16 or 17 European players taken in the first round of this draft. And here we have a center who shoots left, another from Yaroslav.
Well, the Buffalo Sabres made it to the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, and like a lot of teams that make it that far, Jim, they slid a bit this year. There has been some movement. They're losing a gritty guy in Robbie Ray, who they're not going to re-sign him. They need to get some guys who can put the puck in the net. I think they've got some good young talent in Curtis Brown and Michael Pekka, some good young leadership, but they need somebody who they believe can put goals in the net. That's one area they seem to be lacking on.
Well, they did all right going overseas and going to Russia to find Maxim Afinoganov, who I think might be one of the great young scoring stars in the league and for many years to come. And so they go overseas again to Russia and get Artem Krykov as the number 15 pick. The Buffalo Sabres' first pick in the entry draft as we reach the middle of round number 1, and it is a very European draft at this point.
Well, it certainly is. As you say, it was a little top-heavy with North American prospects, but the Euros, as we all anticipated, are starting to go in the middle of the first round.
This is a player who may have moved up higher than some people had him ranked, but obviously Buffalo had him just where they wanted it.
I have a lot of respect for the Buffalo scouting staff as well. Jim Benning, Don Luce, Darcy Regier, the general manager. I think he's done a terrific job on what most people assume is a shoestring budget in Buffalo. And, you know, he's, again, we mentioned earlier, he set himself up very well in goal. The big question for the Sabres fans this year is, will Hasek play the entire season in Buffalo? Or if the team is not doing well, do they move the Dominator and try and stock some forwards?
Darcy Regier is the general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, and he's down on the floor right now with Darren.
Darcy, talk about the pick. You've made a habit, the Buffalo Sabres have made a habit of taking advantage of this draft. Artem Krikunov didn't play a lot this season because of injury. Is he all right?
He's fine. I think the key, our scouts saw a lot of him, not just this past year, obviously, because of the injury, but the previous year, and feel very confident about his ability. So we're excited.
He's taken 15th overall. Were there any thoughts of trying to trade to get higher in the draft?
We, not to give up this pick, we were hoping to trade up with some other assets, but it wasn't there.
All right. Thanks, Darcy.
Thank you.
Jim?
Darcy Regier. Artem chance to add to that and start stockpiling some youngsters, and this is again an important draft for the Montreal Canadiens as they rebuild and need to put some players in their system, because it appears with money being tight there won't be many free agents heading Montreal's way.
No, not like the old days when everybody seemed to flock to Montreal. And you know, the reality is that the Montreal Canadiens have not drafted that well over the last couple of years, so it's time to hit one out of the park.
The Montreal Canadiens are proud to select from Portland Winterhawks Marcel Hossa.
They wish it was Marian Hossa.
It's his little brother, Marcel Hossa, a Slovakian, and indeed the brother of Marian Hossa of the Ottawa Senators. So he won't have to drive very far, go very far to visit his brother, and there could be some interesting battles as those two play in Montreal and in Ottawa, respectively. So Ron Hainsey, a defenseman, and now from the Portland Winterhawks, Marcel Hossa. Well, he's a Montreal Canadian.
Very competitive player, very much like his brother. Big boy, skates well, and that's what the Montreal Canadiens like. They always like the speedsters, and I think they've got one in Marcel Hossa.
He just missed the last draft with an October 12th birthday. He was, by some scouts, the best player on what was a weak team in Portland this past season. He's had 2 years in the Western League, following his brother's footsteps to come over and play in the Western League as opposed to staying at home in Trenchard, as Marian Gaborik elected to do. This young man grew up with Gaborik, but he chose the Western League and the path of his brother, and now he's in Canada like his brother and a member of the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, what he's going to have to do this year is really develop some consistency. He's not the type of kid, I believe, that's ready to step in and play at the National Hockey League level, but he is the type of kid who should be able to elevate his game at the junior level and become a go-to guy for his hockey team. And the thing that he wants to do as well is have a good showing at the World Junior Championship, because that really seems to, if a kid can do that, it really seems to be the next stepping stone for a kid.
His older brother, Marian, appears to be a genuine superstar in the National Hockey League, and he's here and just acknowledges the fact that he was shown on the big screen here in the building.
We see Pierre Dorian Jr. there as well with the Montreal Canadiens, whose dad was a great scout for so many years with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
So the Canadiens elect to keep both of their picks in the first round and get a smooth skating defenseman, an American born from Bolton, Connecticut, and a Slovak forward, Marcel Hossa. And the Blues in the background for the announcement of the pick of the Edmonton Oilers, but first here's Darren with Marcel.
All right, Jim, thanks very much. Marcel, your thoughts on playing against your brother now in the Northeast Division. How's that going to feel? Are you tougher because you play in the Western Hockey League?
Well, Western Hockey League is a pretty tough league, and I will be close to my brother, you know, and maybe next year we will play against each other. So I'm happy that I'm drafted by Montreal. So.
Congratulations and good luck.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Craig?
Réjean, you addressed one need with Hainsey as a defenseman. How does Hossa fit in the offensive category?
Well, as you know, last year, in the last couple of years, we've been playing pretty well as a defensive team, but offensively, we have a lack of players who can score goals, and we feel that Marcel Hossa in the future, with Eric Chouinard that we drafted a couple of years ago, would be the guys who will come in and score goals for our organization in the future.
Does the family bloodline have anything to do with it as well?
Well, we hope so. We didn't pick him because of that, but let's hope that he'll be able to be a good player, as good as his brother.
Thanks very much, Réjean.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, if he's as good as his brother, that's not just a good pick, then it's a great pick. Marcel Hossa is a member of the Montreal Canadiens and will stay in Canada for the next pick. The Edmonton Oilers make the 17th pick in the draft. There's been a lot of change around their table. They have a new general manager. They have a new head coach. They have a director of player personnel in Barry Fraser, who was the architect of those championship teams in the 80s, and this will be his swan song. For Barry, this will be the final draft before retirement.
Well, this is an exciting pick, I think, for hockey in general, because I think Glenn Sather did such a great job in keeping the Edmonton organization in Canada, and he deserves full credit for that. The flip side is that the Edmonton Oilers simply have not been a very good drafting club for many years, and that's the way they won their championships, was through the draft. But they've struggled at the draft table, and now we've got a new regime with Kevin Lowe, Craig McTavish as the coach, and I'm certain that hockey fans in Edmonton are saying, you know what, boys, we've been very supportive of you and supportive of the team, but show us something now and do something at the draft table.
Well, there's been all sorts of discussion going on. Kevin Lowe has been very busy in his first entry draft as a manager. He was the first ever pick of the Oilers, and now he's making the first pick as a general manager. He was trying to make a trade. Now he's going to make a pick.
On behalf of the Edmonton Oilers, I'd like to thank our friends from the South for the warm hospitality. And would like to remind everybody that hockey and Western Canada, and particularly the province of Alberta, is the best place in the world. 22 years ago, a gentleman who will call out our first selection, who is going to make his last first-round selection, picked a fellow from Montreal by the name of Kevin Lowe. And I'm quite honored today to recognize the long service that our head scout, Barry Fraser, has given the National Hockey League and the Edmonton Oilers. So if you join me in applauding Barry.
Very classy of the Calgary audience. Very, very classy.
We look forward to maintaining the Battle of Alberta and can't wait to get back on the ice next year. So we'll let Barry make the selection. Thank you very much.
The Edmonton Oilers select from Yaroslavl, Russia, winger Alexeev Mikhnov.
Another Russian winger. Shoots left. He's a big man. 6'5", 191 pounds. Alexei Mikhnov. He was rated 19th amongst the Europeans. He's of Ukrainian background, a native of the Ukraine, and he's compared by many to Nick Antropov. Well, because no one knows much about him.
I'll tell you, if that's the case, then they've got a great pick, because I don't know how many people are aware of how good Nick Antropov is, but I think Nick Antropov's going to be a star in the NHL with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they're really building some size, adding to the Edmonton Oilers. They've got Yanni Reedy, who's 6'6", 205, and is a great skater. He's been compared to Esa Tikkanen, and now they add a 6'5" guy. Who's going to want to go into that barn and play?
Well, that's one of the areas that Kevin Lowe wants to address in the coming years. This team has been a very fleet-of-foot team. A good skating team needs to be more physical. And Mikhnov is obviously capable of that at 6'5" as we continue this run of Russian wingers in the middle of this draft and at the number 17 spot. You know, there's been much discussion about the upheaval in Edmonton while they've changed to general managers. They have Craig McTavish as their new head coach. And even though Glenn Sather is gone, I don't think there's been much change, in the sense that what they've done is just regenerated through people who are Edmonton Oilers and have always been Edmonton Oilers with some brief pit stops elsewhere. I don't think they've really missed a beat here.
Absolutely. They've got guys who've been in the organization for a number of years. The good side is, though, that Kevin Lowe did go to New York, so he did see a different way of life in terms of how you run an organization. So I think Kevin has the great things he's learned in Edmonton, but he also has been exposed to things in New York, and that could be very, very beneficial to him.
But there is indeed some irony in the fact that this Edmonton Oilers team, with Barry Fraser as its head scout and Glenn Sather as its general manager, became the best team in the world for a number of years because they were so good at the draft. And from 1985 on, they've struggled at the draft with some bad picks, but also because when you're a good team, you're always drafting near the bottom, and the Oilers suffered from some of that as well. And now that they're back drafting again, and this pick in the middle of the first round, they need to rebuild and gain some more players through the Canadian Lifeline, which is the entry draft.
And the real good teams that build through the draft obviously have to be the guys who make those great picks later in the draft, like the New Jersey Devils.
Let's go down to former Oiler teammates Craig Simpson and Kevin Lowe. As Ralph Kiner might have said, we have audio technicalities, and we will straighten that out as their microphone wasn't working. We'll be down to hear from Kevin in just a second with Craig. So let's go over and hear from Barry Fraser. He's with Darren Drager.
Thanks, Jim. 22 years, Barry Fraser. You're the head scout of the Edmonton Oilers. You're on your way out from Kevin Lowe to Alexeev Mikhnov and a lot of players in between.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I had a great run. It's been we've had a terrific bunch of guys to work with, great camaraderie and everything. I'm going to miss it a lot, but time marches on, you know.
Assess the organization right now. Do you like what you see with Kevin Lowe at the top of the pile?
Yeah, I know. Of course, I've known Kevin since he was 17 years old, and I know what his temperament's like and what type of an individual he is, and he's going to do a great job.
You've been in Mexico for quite a while. I understand you're going to run a store now. Is that what you do in retirement?
No, we have a store down we've had there for a number of years, and my wife runs. I might go in it once in a while now.
All right, Barry, thanks very much. Now
You're
back
welcome.
to Craig.
Well, let's try that once again, Kevin. Obviously a big day for you, your first pick. How do you feel? Last year, Yanni Rita 6'5". Now you've got, or 6'6". Now you've got a 6'5". How do you feel about your draft pick?
Well, we like his size. Certainly, you know, the fact that he's a good skater, and we were trying to get a Western Canadian, but we got the next best thing for an Albertans. We got a good Ukrainian boy.
How about offense? It's something that you're trying to get for your hockey club. How do you feel about that with this pick?
Yeah, that's certainly the you know, the element that we're trying to improve on our hockey club. I think everybody is, but we just want to draft the best player available. We've got an excellent coaching staff. We know we can develop these players, and we've got a good nucleus of players that will give these guys an opportunity.
Great. Congratulations, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll continue the season ticket push out in Vegreville and Viking with Mikhnov, the #1 pick for Kevin Lowe as the new manager of the Edmonton Oilers. Now time for the Pittsburgh Penguins, who like
Jaromir Jagr, and I think Jagr likes that, and that's one of the big reasons that Hlinka is going to coach the hockey team.
Eddie Jonsson, who is going back to a scouting and consultants role. Craig Patrick, the manager.
Brooks Orpik.
Brooks Orpik, out of Boston College, slid all the way to the 18th pick. This was a man who many considered would be in the top 5. He's a rugged defenseman, a punishing defenseman, and I envision him next to Darius Kasparaitis, and no one will want to cross the blue line.
And you know the great thing about this pick is who's he named after? But Herb Brooks. So, you know, Herb Brooks, the outgoing coach, he's going to remain in the Pittsburgh organization. Brooks Orpik slid probably a little bit farther than he would have liked to have slid. Nonetheless, he's a quality player, big, strong, tough guy, and he's made quite a name for himself with Boston College, and I think he's going to be a guy who's going to play a long, long time in the National Hockey League.
And he's a little older again than some of the other draftees, so here's a player who could quite possibly step in and play. He's from Amherst, New York. His family started out in San Francisco. He began playing hockey when they moved to Amherst, New York. His mother and father still call home, and they were hockey fans, obviously. And when Herb Brooks was leading the Miracle on Ice and that great gold medal victory for the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, Brooks Orpik was named after him, and now he could join a very good young defense that features Andrew Ference. Darius Kasparaitis, of course, is still there, and Michael Roosevelt is a Czech defender who is an excellent prospect to be very good for the future.
Well, people, you know, we mentioned how they play the run and gun, but you're right, they do have a pretty solid defense. Ference is a guy who's going to step in and be a very good player. You know, when you look at Brooks Orpik, 100 penalty minutes in 38 college games, that's almost the equivalent of 250 penalty minutes at the junior level.
Mike, he played for Jerry York at Boston College, and York also coached Rob Blake when he was at Bowling Green University, and he said that Brooks is like Rob Blake without the shot. That's quite a compliment. Here he is with Darren.
The connection is complete now. You're named after Herb Brooks of the Pittsburgh Penguins, so I guess it makes sense that the team would draft you.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of funny how it worked out, but I was surprised a little bit myself. Pittsburgh's one of the teams I didn't interview with at all. I really didn't have any communication with them, so I was a little surprised, but definitely excited. Kind of get it over with, but at the same time, yeah, I'm pretty excited.
You've got the size and 2 years of experience at Boston College. In your mind, do you think you're ready to step into the National Hockey League?
I don't know. It's tough for me to say. I think more of it's going to depend on what Pittsburgh thinks. I got a good situation at Boston College right now, which would be pretty hard to pass up. Yeah. So, but like I said, I'm just real excited right now.
All right, congratulations. Enjoy the day.
Thanks.
Craig?
Craig Patrick, you're looking to solidify your defense. This looks like a pick that may be one that could play fairly quickly for your hockey club.
Well, we think so. He's a big, strong guy. He plays a physical game, and Ivan Halenka said he wants some big, tough guys, so this is a good pick for us. It's a great pick.
You mentioned the physical play. The fact that he's played against some older players in college hockey, will that help him as well?
Definitely. He's played against very, like Danny Heatley, and kind of neutralized him a lot this year when they played against each other, and we feel that he can be a real asset for ourselves.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Jim, back up to you.
Craig, Brooks Orpik, almost 20 years old. There's Marcel Hossa, new member of the Montreal Canadiens. Alexeev Mikhnov, so obviously it is business as usual. Now it's an entry draft pick for the Coyotes.
Great to be in a city with such spirit for the 2000 entry draft. It's a great thrill to choose a Calgary native with Phoenix's first choice. From Boston College, the Phoenix Coyotes select Christopher Colanos.
Another popular local pick. Phoenix Coyotes take Chris Colanos. He was ranked 27th amongst North Americans, but goes in the 19th spot to Phoenix. He's a centerman who competed against Danny Heatley when the two were playing Tier 2 right here in Calgary.
Absolutely. He's another kid who can play the role. He's got some good offensive numbers in his first year at Boston College, 33 points in 42 games, 46 penalty minutes, so you know that kid can play a very aggressive game as well.
I guess the difference between he and Heatley, and they played together as midgets, and then he went to the Calgary Royals, and Danny Heatley went to the Calgary Canucks to play Tier 2, and they both went off to college. Heatley had a better freshman season than Colanos did, and perhaps that's why Heatley went much higher, and Colanos is taken here as the 19th pick, still in the first round, however, by the Phoenix Coyotes. He had 33 points in his freshman season playing at Boston College. Another Calgary native. It's been a good day for Calgary with Brent Krahn of the Hitmen being drafted by the Calgary Flames. Danny Heatley taken in the number 2 pick to the Atlanta Thrashers, and Chris Colanos, another Calgary native and a Western Canadian hockey player out of Boston College, headed for the Phoenix Coyotes.
Well, I'll tell you, when you're picking 19th in the draft, and the draft has grown so big, when you can pick a kid who's 6'2", 196, who puts up the type of numbers like he does. The year Danny Heatley had 126 points playing Tier 2 junior. Colanos was not far behind with 110 points, so you know he's got a huge offensive upside.
At this point in the draft, many scouts have told us that after about the first 7 or 8 picks, they felt they could get the same kind of player at, say, number 10 or here number 19 as they would at number 35 or 36.
That's been a real common theme this week when we've been talking to the general managers and the directors of player personnel, that it's a very even draft.
A wonderful day for families and friends. Chris Colanos, 18-year-old from Calgary, is chosen by the Phoenix Coyotes, the team that will soon be owned, at least in part, by Wayne Gretzky. Here's Darren with Chris.
Chris, a graduate of the Alberta Junior Hockey League Calgary Royals. I know that there are tons of Flames fans in this building right now at the Saddle Dome. How many Phoenix Coyote fans do you think there are now?
Quite a few, actually. It's a thrill to come back to Calgary and have the draft here in my hometown. And I think there's going to be a few more now that I've gone to Phoenix, but it feels really good.
Congratulations and good luck in the future.
Thanks a lot.
Craig?
Bobby Smith, and interesting the way this draft has gone. A lot of teams finding guys that they didn't expect to be available. What about yourself? Does this address your offensive needs for this club?
I think every team has offensive needs in this league, and I think you're right. A lot of teams are seeing players drafted well out of order on their own list, but we're very pleased to have Chris Colanos. He's a guy that we watched all year, plays very well, big guy that can skate. He can score goals almost like Craig Simpson used to, and we think he's going to be a good player for us.
Is Colanos the type of player that may see action next year, or do you expect him to go back to college?
I expect he will go back to college. He's a big rangy guy. He's about 190 now. He'll probably play at 205 or 210, so we'll let him go back to college.
Great. Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks.
Bobby, I wasn't thinking of Craig Simpson. I was thinking at 6'2", 190 pounds, probably play at 200 as center iceman. I was thinking a bit like Bobby Smith.
One of the best junior players I ever saw play.
The Los Angeles Kings have the next pick. It is in the 20th spot. You'll remember the Kings were busy last year in acquiring Zygmunt Palffy. They gave up a first pick. They also gave up 3 players who had been their first pick in previous years. So they've left their organization bereft of young talent. They need to regroup.
Well, you know what? They were ranked 28th out of 28 teams in the Hockey News Future Watch issue, which is not a very good thing. So I think they've got their work cut out for them. They don't have a whole lot in the system, as I mentioned. Pavel Rose is a guy that some people think he can play. Other people are worried about his size. So time will tell.
Matthew Biron went to the New York Islanders. So did Olli Jokinen in the Ziggy Palffy deal. And when they didn't have that first pick in '96 that you see on your screen, they took Josh Green in the second round. And he went to the Islanders as part of the Palffy deal as well. So for Dave Taylor and his longtime Chief Scout Al Murray, this too is an important draft. And the way things are going, you heard Bobby Smith talk about people's lists being a little out of order. Everybody's lists are so different that the Kings may well get the player they want and want it in this spot, and may well get a player as good as somebody at the number 10 spot.
And you know, you can't really blame them for bringing in Ziggy Palffy. They needed a marquee player, and they went out and got a marquee player. But the time has come now that you have to replenish the system.
Of course, if they could ever find somebody like Rob Blake again, that would be a tremendous draft, but those are few and far between, and this is not a draft that has featured many defensemen. Mostly wingers, many of them from Europe. 11 of the first 18 picks in this draft, 11 of the first 19 now, have been of European origin, from Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and most predominantly Russia. And now the Los Angeles Kings make pick number 20.
Los Angeles Kings would like to thank the great hockey fans of Calgary for their hospitality. We'd also like to tip our hat to the New Jersey Devils, Lou Lamoriello, Larry Robinson on the Stanley Cup. And I'd like to turn it over to Al Murray to make our selection.
Los Angeles is very happy to select from Russia, Alexander Frolov.
So 12 of the first 20 European players drafted in this 2000 entry draft. Alexander Frolov, another member of the great Russian under-18 tournament team. He was very consistent at the under-18 tournament in Switzerland. In fact, he played on a line with the highly rated Mikhail Yakubov, who's been drafted by Chicago.
Well, this guy's a natural goal scorer. Most people believe he's a natural goal scorer, and he certainly did well this year at the World Under-18. He had 5 goals in 6 games, and at the 5 Nations, 3 goals in 4 games. So you know that when he's on the ice, players are looking for him to finish.
That under-18 Russian team lost to Finland in the final game, stoned by a goaltender. But there could be as many as 9 members of that under-18 team drafted, and most of them will be drafted early. Alexander Frolov is a member of the Los Angeles Kings, the 12th European in the first 20 picks.
This guy brings some size to the table, which Palffy doesn't bring, so that's a nice asset for the LA Kings.
They continue to wait for Pavel Rosa, and nobody's sure whether or not he's going to be a prospect, and maybe this young man will step in and be there quicker. Although there's no quick fix, we would caution people from a draft like this one. Last year in the 1999 entry draft, there were 28 picks in the first round. There were only a half a dozen that even played in the NHL last season, and only 2 played regularly, and they played on teams that really needed help. Patrick Steffen was able to play, and Tim Connolly was able to play for the Islanders. There were a couple of others that had a cup of coffee, like David Tanabe with Carolina and Steve McCarthy with Chicago. But for the most part, it's a waiting game now on these entry draft players.
It certainly is, and as you mentioned, you know, had the players who played full seasons in the NHL last year gone to stronger organizations, there's a very good chance they may have been sent back too. So what you see at the draft nowadays is the kids we're watching here on television, you might not see them again for a year and a half or 2 years, but they'll continue their development at a lower level.
And there are some at the top of this draft that will obviously have to step in a little quicker for teams like the Islanders, the Thrashers, the Wild, and the Blue Jackets. 3 of those 4 expansion teams. Alexander Frolov, a left winger who shoots right. And a big Russian winger is now a member of the Los Angeles Kings. And here is Darren Dreger with Dave Taylor, the general manager of the Kings.
Dave, any chance you get to improve your offense? Obviously, you're going to take that. In this man, do you get better up front?
Oh, without question. He's got an excellent package of size, skating ability. He can make plays. He can score goals. We're very happy to have him with the LA Kings.
At 6'3", 190 plus, is he able to step into the National Hockey League right now?
I think he's going to take a little bit of time to develop. His plans more than likely would be to stay back in Russia for another season, but we're certainly open to discussing any possibilities.
Dave, thanks very much, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you.
Jim? Kings back in the draft this.
They had a pretty good team last year, and they could have used some assets for Yashin.
They have been a very good drafting team.
Congratulations to New Jersey. Special greetings to our fans back in Ottawa and the Capital Region, and a big support or big thanks for their support in Ottawa. I'd like to introduce Jarmo Kekalainen to make our first selection.
The Ottawa Senators are proud to select from CSKA Moscow, Anton Volchenkov.
Anton Volchenkov is a defenseman. There haven't been many of them chosen in this draft. He is just the 5th one. And after 6 members of the Russian under-18 team had been drafted all forwards, Volchenkov is drafted out of the Central Red Army system. His bloodlines are in hockey. His father, Alexeev, was a member of that Russian team that played the great New Year's Eve game in Montreal in '75, Mike.
One of the best games I ever saw, Jim. That was a tie, and many people still think that was the best game of all time. This guy here, again, we talk about offensive upside. It doesn't show in his stats, but I believe the Senators think that within a few years, he'll be a guy who can contribute on the offense. And it's interesting that we talk about Alexei Yashin, who's obviously going to be an outgoing Russian player, and now they have a Russian player coming in to potentially replace him down the road.
And they'll hope that in a few years down the road, he won't have the same characteristic as Yashin and that he'll want to renegotiate. But Anton Volchenkov is drafted by the Ottawa Senators. They've done a terrific job in the draft. You saw Marshall Johnston introduce Jarmo Kekalainen. With Pierre Gauthier at the helm, they had great late picks. Marshall Johnston's background is in scouting as well, and with the New Jersey Devils, and he's done a tremendous job over the years. So this is a team that will have a good day, doubtless, at the draft table with these people at the helm. And they've drafted a young defenseman, only the 5th taken in the first 21 picks, Anton Volchenkov.
You know, I like the Ottawa Senators blue line. I think Wade Redden's going to blossom as a star. I think he's going to be a very good player. I don't think there's a person in the hockey world that would make Redden the number 2 pick if they could go back and do that draft again. But they just add some toughness and some size to the blue line. That's what they need.
Jason York, Sammy Salo.
Chris Phillips, who can play defense and forward.
And that has been the basis with which Jacques Martin has worked his team and built his team in preventing goals first. And this team still may be trying to make a deal at some point to shore up things in goal, depending on what's going to happen with Tom Barrasso, who could be a free agent on the 1st of July. Let's go down on the floor again. Here's Craig.
Marshall Johnson, there weren't a whole lot of defensemen in the top ranks here in the draft this year, but how do you feel about finally getting another good, solid young defenseman for your team?
Well, we're very pleased. I have to say that. I guess sometimes, you don't think your player is going to be there, but we had Anton very high on our list, and we're just delighted that he was available there, Craig, and we're looking forward to having him.
Thanks. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Marshall Johnston joined the Ottawa Senators after years in the New Jersey organization, and it is New Jersey, the Stanley Cup champions, up next with the 22nd pick acquired from Colorado in a deal that saw the Devils get Claude Lemieux, and he helped them win the Stanley Cup, and the Conn Smythe was won by Scott Stevens, who was selected in the draft by Washington back in 1982. The New Jersey Devils are as good a team at the draft, as unpredictable team at the draft as any in the league.
Well, they are, and you know what? I think in the hockey world, many people point to David Conte, their director of player personnel, as being, if not the best, one of a handful of the very best scouts they have. Look at the guys, Marty Brodeur, Niedermeyer, Danico, and even on last year's team, Gomez, Colin White, Brian Rafalski, they found over in Europe. John Madden is a guy who I believe, made such an impact that when you watch in the 2002 Olympics, he's going to be a guy who might be Canada's checking center.
One of the interesting things about this team is that they have new ownership, and will Lou Lamoriello and David Conte still be with this team after the new ownership takes over?
The New Jersey Devils would like to thank the Calgary organization and their fans for their fine hospitality. Also like to thank our fans back in New Jersey, in particular those at Pegasus, for our annual draft party. And at this time, I'd like to have David Conte select our player.
New Jersey Devils are proud to select from the U.S. Junior Hockey League, David Hale.
David Hale out of the U.S. Junior Hockey League. One thing about David Conte, first thing you know about him is he'll never tell you who he's going to pick, and the second is you'll never be able to predict where he's going to go. He went for a Finnish goaltender last year in the first round, and now he goes to Sioux City, Iowa, in the U.S. Hockey League, where Rostislav Klesla played 2 years ago, and gets David Hale, a defenseman who shoots left.
Well, you know, David Conte, the one thing I do know about him, he's not big on the Canadian Major Junior Hockey. I mean, obviously as a scout and in his position, he has to scout it as thoroughly as he scouts everything else. But it doesn't surprise me that he looks to other avenues to stock his New Jersey Devils team. He's picked a tough one here. David Hale's a big boy, 6'1", 204 pounds. His last 3 years, penalty minutes 150, 127, and last season 187 minutes.
He's from Colorado Springs, Colorado. He's on his way to the University of North Dakota. A banger. He's known as probably a number 5 or 6 defenseman when he makes the National Hockey League. David Hale from Sioux City of the U.S. Hockey League is the first pick of the Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils. I would think it would be absolutely crazy for any new ownership group to come in and tear apart the management structure that has put together the Stanley Cup team. If you look around the National Hockey League, Mike, you will find players selected and trained by the New Jersey Devils in almost every organization.
Well, they've become a great feeder team for the National Hockey League, and while they make trades and they bring in assets and then they move assets, they still continue to be competitive. I don't believe there's a team over the last 10 years that's been as consistently competitive as the New Jersey Devils. They've had a couple of rough years in the playoffs leading up to this season, but they always had good players, both at the American League level and the National League level.
28 players from the last 11 drafts of the New Jersey Devils are playing somewhere in the NHL, and David Hale's probably not far away. But we know he's not far away here today, Darren.
Jim, as you guys talked about, 187 penalty minutes in 54 games. David Hale, is it fair to assume that you like to play a tough style of hockey?
That's my style. That's how I play, and it gives me more room. So, yeah, of course.
Good luck with the Stanley Cup champions.
Thank you very much.
Craig?
Lou Lamoriello, first off, congratulations on your Stanley Cup championship. You think of your run, you had Colin White and Brian Rafalski doing such a great job of young defensemen. Where does Hale fit into that future?
Well, this is a young man who I think is a prototype type defenseman that we like, and Scott Stevens, you know, he's got several years left, and we hope when this young man is ready to play, he can take over where he has been, because he's a similar type player.
When you start to look into the future, what does the future of Lou Lamoriello hold?
Well, we're going to decide that sometime after today, and we made a commitment that we would get through everything we had to get through. This is a very important day for our scouts, and as our run was for our players, so we'll focus it on this week, Craig.
Once again, congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Lou Lamoriello, the general manager of the Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils. Anton Volchenkov, David Hale, the latest picks, both defensemen.
Hey, what's up, Tom?
Guys, in that last grouping, 9 of 12 are Europeans kind of dominating the scene. Vancouver is next, Jim.
And not a surprise that so many of those young Russians were selected here in the middle rounds. Mark Messier was a Vancouver Canuck for the past 3 seasons. He is destined to become an unrestricted free agent, but he will leave a legacy in Vancouver in that over the past season especially, he's taught many of their young draft picks how to play in the National Hockey League and how to prepare. If he's to move on, who's to take his place? The Canucks have done a very good job with the draft. They stole the show, taking the Sedin twins at 2 and 3. They haven't been able to do it this year, but this is the last piece of the Pavel Bure puzzle.
Congratulate New Jersey as well. We are very pleased to select from the Canadian Hockey League
And the Western Hockey League, from Swift Current, Nathan Smith.
Nathan Smith, who hails from Strathcona, Alberta, near Edmonton. Older brother Jared was picked by the New York Islanders in 1997. Smith is a center, shoots left, and one of the interesting things about the Canuck organization now, Mike, is that going to camp, if Nathan were to go to camp with them this fall, they could have as many as 8 players, 25 years and under, whose natural position is center ice, competing for jobs.
That'll be the center of attention then. I know this guy slipped a little bit in the midterm ratings, but is still considered a good prospect. He was the player of the game for Team Moore at the prospects games this year, and that's always a very important thing for the young players when they get to go against their peers and they're recognized for the stuff they do on the ice.
Some things never change. When Pat Quinn was the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, he had a seemingly endless search for a #1 center. They would draft, and some picks better than others, and I won't bring up the name Libor Polacek, but I've just done that. But they've often sought that #1 man. Pat still likes that kind of player. Obviously, Brian Burke, who is a disciple of Pat Quinn's, likes center icemen as well, and I think it's a wise thing to do. You draft people whose natural position is center. It's easier for them to move to the wings. The center ice position is the start of responsibility and creativity in hockey.
Absolutely, and of course there's going to be a huge void now with the Vancouver Canucks because everybody seems to think that Mark Messier is going to rejoin the New York Rangers. They'll miss his leadership, but they'll also miss his offense from the center position.
The Vancouver Canucks with the 23rd pick, and this again is a pick acquired from Florida. So it is the final piece in the Pavel Bure trade, and it's Nathan Smith, and here he is with Darren.
Nathan, your brother was drafted by the Islanders in 1997. I know that you celebrated on that day, but the party will be just as sweet for you here today.
Well, yeah, definitely. Just always excited getting drafted. I think it doesn't matter really where you go. It's just exciting to get drafted and go in the first round. Yeah, I'm very happy with that.
You were born and raised near Edmonton. I suspect that you were an Oilers fan. You're now property of the Vancouver Canucks. What do you think you have to do this summer in an effort to make that squad?
Well, definitely have to keep working hard, get a lot stronger, work on quickness, and yeah, mentioning the Oilers thing, I was definitely an Edmonton Oilers fan growing up, watching Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier. It was very exciting.
Congratulations and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Craig?
Brian Burke, last year at this draft, you were very busy coming in at this position now. Are you happy with the type of pick you were able to receive?
We're pleased. Nathan Smith is a really solid two-way player, good bloodlines. We think he's a real good prospect, and I'm very, very pleased with the pick. Not quite as much excitement as a year ago, but that's okay too.
All right, Brian. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig.
So the Vancouver Canucks have made their pick, and it's Nathan Smith, and you may have heard a smattering of boos, but a lot of cheers in the background as it was announced that Pat Quinn of the Toronto Maple Leafs would make the next pick, the 24th pick of the first round. This is an important draft for the Toronto Maple Leafs because they have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds and a real chance to get a few good players.
Well,